Okay, so let's talk about the recently revealed Aatrox Rework. He's like 10 times more edgy now. I didn't even think that was possible, but they somehow made him edgier. But at least they made his sword cooler. The only thing I don't like about his new design is that they took away his like banner wings. As as silly as some people thought that looked, I actually really think it contributed to his whole aesthetic and his theme of being the guy that just comes into a battle and immediately the underdog just has their odds just of winning skyrocket because he's the guy that rallies them and raises morale before just slaughtering people. Anyway, so I've had a little bit of time to think about what his abilities are and what they do, and the best way I could describe him right now is this weird mishmash of Mordekaiser and Riven. And you'll probably see what I mean as you look at his abilities. So his passive is that his next basic attack has increased range and deals percent of the target's maximum healthless damage. And it also reduces healing and shielding on the target for the next few seconds. So it basically applies grievous wounds and shield reduction? I don't know. There's not actually a specific name for such a mechanic, but it's kind of like Jarvan's passive, so that's a thing. Its cooldown is slightly reduced whenever Aatrox casts a spell, or whenever he lands on the edge of Darkened Blade. When he lands the edge of Darkened Blade in the champion. Right, Darkened Blade is his Q, so it's kind of like if you cross Riven's Q with Darius's Q. But the reason why I specifically said Mordekaiser before is because each successive hit does more damage, which is like a big theme of Mordekaiser's Q. And you'll notice that every single one of them knocks up. Or at least they do on the edge. And it does more damage at the end, at the edge. Or in the third cast, it's in the center. They also all have unique hitboxes, which is something interesting. And he can move while casting them, even though it's not shown here. So it's going to be interesting to play against this because he's just, with this ability alone, he's got a buttload of crowd control. Like, do not pick a champion that has any reliance on like having to fully channel an ability against Aatrox because he's got interrupts coming out of his ass. Speaking of interrupts, here's another crowd control ability. So if he lands a skill shot, he then puts you in the box. If you don't leave the box, he yanks you back into the middle. So this is 2 interrupts in 1. Crazy, right? So, yeah, this combined with his Q basically means that he's got a lot of lockdown on his basic abilities, and that combined with the fact that he's a fighter and is supposed to have a respectable damage output, basically means that he's going to be a significant deal. His E is a very short dash, it's just about enough to get him over the wall, but it also increases his AD for a short period of time. And while it's not shown in this preview here, he can cast it while casting his Q. It also passively just gives him, like, as far as I can tell with this description, universal vamp. So everything he does will heal him for the portion of the damage it does. So that's something. One thing I haven't thought about is that possibly, since his E can store 2 charges, possibly the attack damage steroid on it can stack, but they haven't explicitly said that it can, so I'm going to assume that it can't for the time being. Right, so then there's his ultimate, which is kind of lame in terms of its like description, but hey, it looks cool. But anyway, yeah, so it increases him in size, it gives him wings, which just basically just increases movement speed for a period while he's out of combat. And I'm going to assume it increases his range as well. But the other main consequence is that he gains that secondary resource bar underneath his health bar. That's his blood well, which works pretty similarly to how it did when he first came out. In that when you kill him, when he's got the blood well up, he will revive with the amount of health that depends on how full the blood well is. The difference to his release state being that you don't have to build up the blood well yourself. It just automatically fills over time. So yeah, that's something. It also means that his ultimate is now like the strict cooldown for his revive passive, which was always a big point of contention for Aatrox's design in the past. So it's not as essential a steroid as it was before, but it's more just to provide him with defensive utility when he's fighting a bunch of people. I can only assume, anyway. So, there's 2 preview clips. The first one shows him in a lane with 2 buffs, 1 level advantage over Orianna, and that's a demonstration of him casting his Q while casting his Q and casting his E in the middle of it. Just play that again. See, there it is. And just a demonstration of the amount of crowd control he's got. And that's a lot of damage, considering that's a lot of crowd control as well. And then add to that the fact that we know he's going to be healing himself for a portion of this damage as well, and that's just kind of crazy. Also, unlike Aatrox in the past, he can move while he's reviving himself, which is kind of a big deal, because before, when you died, it was like GA. You were unable to move, which means that you were in a very predictable position. So you were... If you weren't already in a safe place, you certainly weren't getting any safer. So yeah, he just kind of does a lot. Big threat. But he seems like he's a lot more slow and deliberate, whereas before he was pretty much, you know, always built with either like a specific burst window in mind with like Trinity Force, or he was like attack speed focused. Like when he was first released, Blade of the Ruined King was the core item on him. And he was like basically just a guy that dueled you. And you couldn't duel him because his W healed him for a shit ton, or it dealt a shit ton of damage to you. So that's kind of it for his abilities. This is his splash now. He's a big boy. His old splash arts for his skins haven't changed that much. They've just updated his wing design and his sword design, which I'm okay with, because I, for the most part, actually like Aatrox's skins. I'm a fan of Justicar, I'm a fan of Mecha. I'm not as big on this pirate Sharkman Aatrox, but oh well, it's a thing. So, yeah. What are the worries that I could have with Aatrox? I think that he's, as I said before, he's got a lot of crowd control. This is a lot for just like a standard fighter type character, and I think that's going to be a major point of contention. I think that all three of his Qs potentially knocking up is an exceptionally big deal, and I think that if they wanted to nerf him because he's got too many things on his kit, they'll probably start by making it so that the edge Qs slow instead of knock up. Because all of them knocking up just strikes me as a bit ridiculous, especially considering that he's got another crowd control ability in the form of his W. And although it's not the best mobility in the world, his E, you know, being mobility, not just that, but being 2 charges of mobility, it's more significant than this little crappy preview will make it look, because there's a lot more walls than that he can dash over. And as shown in the preview down below, he can dash to like kind of correct the edge window of his Q, so that he can like make sure that his targets are inside the knock-up range. The other major concern is that, given that he has all of this damage and all of this crowd control, the fact that he's also healing himself for a portion of the damage, it just strikes me that he's just doing too many things. Like, that's the major concern of this kit. I feel like it's probably going to be quite fun to play, and I think that the fact that he's got some distinct telegraphs on all of his Qs means that I think that he might be reasonably fair to play against, but we'll have to see. But the biggest thing is I feel like he'll probably end up doing too many things. But I anticipate that he'll be decent. I also think that he'll probably excel in the jungle more so than before, because of the fact that his Q is an exceptionally good clearing tool for chickens, and because he's got so much crowd control, the crab isn't going to be a big deal for him in the slightest. So yeah, assuming he's as good a duelist as he was before in his prime, he'll probably be a top tier jungler. As for the lane, well, this preview kind of speaks for itself. Granted, it's not against another fighter. It's against someone who's just kind of running away from him and isn't really fighting back. So maybe his weakness will be that he's just kind of squishy by default, which was one of his weaknesses before, so yeah. Anyway, that's Aatrox. Sorry for not having a video out in the past week. I've been doing other things, but I've been playing a lot of BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, so I might have some video coverage of that soon. Maybe like some small character guides. It's very easy to pick up characters in that game, so I might be able to show a couple things off that are like fun. Not necessarily like character guides, but like fundamental game plan ideas. But anyway, that can come some other time. Anyway, thanks for watching. Toodle.